welcome to the Plympton Public Safety Building Committee meeting. This meeting is being recorded for cablecast and YouTube presentation by Area 58 Community Access Media. The video of this meeting is not to be considered an official public record. And I need somebody to take minutes until Ross gets here. Do we have a volunteer?
I'll be happy to.
Oh, you have to take them anyway, right?
I'm taking them anyway, so.
Alrighty.
Do you want some paper?
I write on a copy.
Okay.
Okay, so let us first deal with the minutes from previous meetings. By my reckoning, we have one from P3 for last week. Going back with Ross's, we have September 7th and September 14th. So let's start with Ross's for September 7th.
Did we do the July's? Did we?
We did July, yeah,
We're
a
up
week or
through,
two.
we're up through August.
August 31st.
Okay. I just printed this one.
Okay, do we have any amendments to September 7th minutes? Seeing none, a motion to accept them as written.
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in favor, and 2 not here yet.
Who's not here?
Jake
Ross.
Jacobson and
Jacobson's not
Ross.
here.
and Ross McPherson. Ross said he is
Art's here,
coming.
Harry's here, John's here.
Okay, moving on to Ross's minutes for 9/14. Any amendments or additions?
I didn't see it.
Motion to accept them as written.
So moved.
And a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? And now we have P3's minutes for the same meeting. Motion to accept them as written.
So moved.
Any second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Minutes are approved, thank you all. Okay, first on the agenda is a discussion of Dunham & Sweeney's Design Services contract. And then we get to vote on whether or not we want to recommend it to the Board of Selectmen.
We suggest you do. The fee is reasonable. The tasks, I mean, we can argue a little bit about the tasks if you want to look at the tasks and dig into the weeds on the tasks. But the basic bottom line is they're gonna provide us with a feasibility study of the fire and the police station, develop the elevations and site plan and an estimate on both projects, but really develop the estimate on the police station since that's going first, so that we're ready for town meeting in May.
Does it include soil testing and, I mean, what
No,
else?
soil testing is done by the owner, survey's done by the owner, we'll do the survey, hand it to them on a CAD, we'll do the soil testing after he's designed the building and determined where things are to go. He'll indicate where the test pits are for septic if we need to, you guys tell him we don't. And he'll indicate where we need borings for the buildings, so that's the general rule on that.
What about concrete testing?
Well, we don't do any of that in this phase.
I mean, construction.
Yeah, when we get to construction, this will get amended, and we'll do complete concrete, what will happen is, the designer and the structural engineer will recommend a series of tests, concrete being one of them, but connections, infrared for insulation. I mean, it's, the stuff that we're doing today is so much farther along than years ago, it's unbelievable. I mean, they take a picture of the building, they can tell you where we blew the insulation, and you can see the heat coming through the wall with the infrared. It's
You can
unbelievable.
now get them for, you can get, FLIR now makes one for your phone.
Oh, yeah.
200 and $300. And this is a camera that was 10 grand 6-7 years ago.
That's correct. So it's unbelievable what's come down the line. So, yeah, plus, we get to construction, we'll be taking pictures and we'll be taking aerial pictures and things like that.
What other subcontractors are we gonna need prior to town meeting? I mean, knowing our limited budget.
Only ones we're gonna need is survey,
survey.
survey, geotech. Survey should be about probably 10 grand at the most. It has to be under 10 grand, otherwise we gotta do an RFP. And the geotech's probably gonna be 5 grand at the most.
And you already had that in the budget.
Yep, no, we've got that in the budget. I've got 25,000 for testing and survey and so on and so forth, so I think we're okay based on that, but something might come up. I mean, when we do the geotech, if we hit something we don't like, we're gonna wanna explore it. That's why we have a little bit extra in there for us to do a little more work.
So no Indian bones or anything like that, right?
I already went through that once, so I don't wanna do that again. I already hit 2 Indians in East here. Like, they cursed me. And they were 600 years old. They were 200 years older than the pilgrims getting here. Pretty cool, huh?
Except for the budget.
Actually, we only shut down for 4 days.
What about rattlesnake dens?
I'm not going near no rattlesnakes. I don't do snakes. Jeff does snakes. Says right here, Jeff, page 3, I do snakes. 5,000. So, you know, my ultimate goal tonight is just to get that voted on and to get Jeff to talk about the programmatic, knowing that Jeff's here, knowing that his contract hasn't been ratified. We appreciate that to save time. All right? But if there are any items on here you want to talk about, something you want to, he's been striking and edited. This is a pretty basic,
Yeah, I mean, I read it, well, I read it on the
I
computer.
mean, I thought it was pretty good. So,
I mean, it seems broad enough. I mean, we have the direct reference from modular because of how much discussion we've had of modular, but I don't see anything in here that, for instance, precludes from saying, hey, you know, this is what you could do as one of the options of doing a joint building. You know, there's nothing in here that precludes
you
how
mean public safety?
Yeah, right. You know, it seems to me that we've called out modular because we need to, because it's an important piece of that, but.
Well, you can do a joint safety building that's modular. I mean,
No, but my point is that, you know, we did see some of the other presentations that came in sort of went that way, and it seems like that might be something to do, but I don't think we need to actually call that out in here, because it's broad enough.
I actually talked to all of the designers about modular, because in my first 2 meetings, it was quite clear that some of the members wanted to go down the path.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it's important that we at least show you a cost comparison on a size building, modular versus non-modular, and the benefits and there are pros to
No, I
modular,
absolutely,
and there are
that wasn't
cons.
mine, that wasn't
And then you
mine.
guys will weigh it and make a decision, and we'll take that turn. I don't think you'll go that route, I really don't, but I think you need to be educated on it and make the decision.
Well, we
based
have
on-
to, because it's been talked about for so long as
In
part
town.
of, in this
Yes.
in this
board.
group and the group prior to us, that we have to address it and make sure that we're clear on where it is and isn't. But my point that I was trying to make was that that's in here, which is good, because we do need to make that point, but there isn't anything else precluding creative ways when we get through the design process to sort of say, how do we deal with the site, how do we deal with the buildings, that will just be part, that's built in here.
Right. Okay. Oh, so you were giving me a compliment in an offhanded way?
I was.
No.
Don't get too excited about that, we're gonna have to take that back.
You can buy a recording later.
No, but, so I think that I don't have any concerns
Okay.
with.
I think one of the things with the modular, I mean, the soil samples in the work, when will that be done? Because that's gonna have a factor on determining whether or not we're gonna go to modular too. I mean, if it's really bad dirt out there, and we can't do a full basement like we'd kinda like to, you know, that's something we'd like to know sooner than
You can do
later.
a full basement and still do modular,
Yeah,
all right? As a matter of fact, if you were going to go modular,
I wouldn't
I
wanna
would
do
encourage
modular.
a full basement.
Yeah,
Because the modular is a 6-sided box, it comes in sections. And one of the sides is the floor.
yeah.
Which is one of the reasons I don't like modular, because in the bathrooms and the kitchens, they don't last. If you go in a modular structure after 10 or 15 years, the wet walls and the bathrooms, they're all soggy.
Yeah, and if any reason we didn't do a full basement, then we would consider modular.
Well, you're still gonna have to,
Well, yeah.
but a modular's still gonna have to be off the ground a little.
Yeah, I know, we're saying.
You're gonna have a crawl space under it. So, and we'll get to that, because I've gone down this path before, and, you know, there are benefits to modular. I don't want you to think it's a bad idea, I really don't.
When do we do the soil testing? I mean, what's,
Typically, we do the soil testing after the design, basic design locations
yeah,
are done, and the basic size of the building is done. And Jeff's got he's got the CAD drawing, and he can place the buildings on there so that we can get reference points. And Jeff would want to say, you know, I'd like to see boring here, 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 here. The structural engineer wants one here, because we've got a load bearing area, the structural engineer wants one here. There'll be more borings after we get the vote.
yeah.
All right, these are borings just enough for us to be able to go to town meeting and say it's safe to build here. This is not, we're not doing enough borings to build a building. So during design development and during construction documents, we will be doing more exploratory, and we'll be digging even deeper into it, and more test pits. You know, you're not, you can't, how do I say this? It's a study with a limited budget. You're gonna give them as much information as the limited budget can give them, so they can make an educated decision. And you will be able to do that with the budget, and with the designer, and with the OPM that you have today.
And would the borings sooner than later help him exclude some areas where, I mean, supposing he tried to place it somewhere on the lot, and then later we bore and find out that it wouldn't fit there, won't, you know, we can't build it there. Should we know that ahead of time? To exclude areas? Otherwise, are we wasting time, you know, doing a design for this particular area when we can't use it?
What would you
Jeff,
see?
you wanna, feel free to chime in at any point in time.
Yeah.
The simple answer to the question is, we can do a grid
Take
work.
yourself a pit here.
Figuratively and literally.
I think that the question's always a really interesting question, because it ultimately comes down to how much money do you want to spend to eliminate
Exactly.
risk.
Yeah,
You have risk when every time you're building anything, and the point of this process is to minimize it as much as possible, so that by the time you're out, the contractor has the contract, they're ready to go to bid, you reduce it to as little as you possibly can. The goal of a feasibility study is to cross off the list the big risk factors. I don't mind moving the building around a little bit in a conceptual way if all of a sudden we find out that there's a little bit of ledge or something down there. My general opinion is that unless we find water down there, there's probably not gonna be much that is gonna drastically change the location of the building, because soils, for the most part, are large areas. It's not just, you know, you have this strange soil that for 50 feet is in the site, and then all of a sudden everything else is fine. So you've got a building here on the site, you've got the fire station on generally this piece of land. So my assumption is that you could build a building here. What the borings in test pits will really tell us is what's the most advantageous spot on the site. I don't think we'll be finding places, and find some wood to knock on, but I don't think we'll be finding any places that will tell us we just can't build in a certain location.
From a bearing standpoint, you can build anywhere on this site.
yeah.
It's just a question of how big the footing's gonna be, or what type of foundation you have. The water question, and, whether we drill and hit an oil tank, or, it's not gonna happen. I mean, we're gonna know when we're doing the samples. When they're pulling the samples out, they look at the samples, they log the samples, and they're gonna do probably 4 25-foot, I'm guessing, three 25-foot borings and one 60-foot boring. They'll do one really deep, and they'll do 3 that aren't so deep. And they're gonna be able to tell the type of soils, and they take 3 to 5 feet, they take a little jar out, and they label it, and they bring it back, and they actually determine what the soil is, and what the bearing capacity is, and where they hit water, and all that comes out of the geotech. But could you hit a ledge cropping 50 feet from where you're doing your borings? Of course you can. We all live in New England, we know what it's like.
The other important piece of that is the seismic resistance of the soil, you know, how
Right.
much the soil is gonna liquefy in the seismic event.
Liquefaction.
Yeah,
And you
liquefaction.
need, the structural engineer needs to know that, because that will have a direct impact on the cost of the structure, in terms of how much he's gotta put into the design of the structure to resist certain forces. That will be an important part for us, but you don't need to do 100 warnings to find that, you can do one.
Liquefaction's like pudding. So you remember when you were a kid and your mother had a big bowl of pudding and it would bounce when she put it on the table?
I love pudding.
That's pretty much what liquefaction is.
You're speaking
Always a food reference, chief, always. So, you know, if you can vote to send it to your board, that would be great. If you guys have any questions,
Does anybody have any more questions about the contract or moving it to the Board of Selectmen?
No questions. One more, a concern.
Okay.
Well, speak your concern.
I don't want to get too far down the road before we focus on a police station, period.
I don't want to get too far down the road. In other
I know we've
words,
got to look at the concept of having both structures, but I'm convinced that if we go to the town with anything more than a police station, it's not going to fly.
interesting.
But that's not what this is about.
Yeah.
You'll get the plan, and then what you bring to town meeting is really a separate piece of that. You use the plan to justify what you bring to town meeting, but I think
What you're really doing is a master plan for this site.
right.
And you're gonna be able to go to town meeting and say, in 2017, we're doing this. This over here is not gonna be done until the town says to go forward and do it.
But I think what
you're
it
not
does-
gonna develop that. You're just gonna do
No, I'm
a
just-
simple sketch and an elevation, because one of the things I think will be really important for this project, and I'm speaking purely as an OPM, not as a resident of Plympton, but I think that the residents are gonna wanna know what this overall site looks like and feels like and drives like when they're done. So, even if we build in one little corner, and we don't do the parking lots, and we don't do the this, and we don't do the that, but we know what it's going to be in the end, I think it's important they know the town's heading in that direction, because
Yeah.
they're not gonna want some mismatch.
and
I
we also-
I just want the focus tempered
Mm-hmm.
to that degree, that's all.
I hear you.
Okay. Thank you.
No further questions, Your Honor.
I'm gonna throw the
Now,
book.
that was respect.
He's got his fingers crossed.
Are you doing his budget this week?
Okay, so hearing no more concerns, I'd like a motion that we accept this contract to put forward to the Board of Selectmen.
Second.
Who made the motion?
So moved.
Somebody made the-
I said it, Harry moved it.
Harry moved it.
What's his name over there seconded it?
Second.
Bob?
Bob. Thank you.
All in favor?
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? No, and two not here.
All right, so that's done.
Now we had to beat up on him a little bit?
Now he's gonna come in and take over this meeting, and I'm gonna go home. Have a nice night, everybody. See you later. Jeff, you're up.
All right, can I turn the table?
Come up to the table.
Right.
You could have joined the table before, we don't bite.
We do, too.
You were expecting more members, so I didn't want to take anybody's seat.
They've now lost their seats.
He wasn't here for the biting incident.
John, okay. So, the good news is, other than that you've approved my fee, or at least passed it along, is that we've already started work. And I met with the fire chief, I met with the police chief, we've got their initial comments about space needs, their current stations, looking forward 25 years, what they see, which is always a mysterious task. There's no right way to do it, there's no wrong way to do it, it's just kind of what do you think is going to happen. And my job now is to go back to my office, compare this information with past work that we've done on other projects, and put it into a draft report, a draft space needs report. The first draft of that I'm going to share with the chiefs. We're gonna do a little bit of making sure that I heard them correctly in terms of staffing and shift numbers, and sort of components of the departments. And then that draft will get presented to this board. This
approval.
committee. Well, I think the first approval will be great, but I'm assuming you're gonna have comments. So
No. What I was trying to get at is, although you're getting your initial data from the police and the fire, which is wonderful, the ultimate decision board is sitting here.
That's correct. So we won't move forward without getting your approval on each step. So first draft, we'll go back to this group. We'll get approval on that based on comments. We get feedback. We might create a second draft. And continue doing that until we get to a final draft and you're comfortable with it and it's accepted as the final program. And that will have square footage for a police station, square footage for a fire station, and basically we'd be able to tell you how big your building is at that point. Once we've got that piece of information, we can then start concept design. We need to know how big the building is, what the spaces are going to be in it before we can realistically start our concept design. So once that's finished, we'll start our concept design. While that's going on, we're going to be looking at the site. We're going to get the survey from Dan's crew, or whoever it is you're using as a surveyor, and we'll start analyzing the site, looking at zoning issues, looking at all the various issues surrounding the site, and start determining where the best spots for buildings might be. So that at the time that we're ready to start our concept design, we have a good understanding of the site and we know generally where it's going to go. I mean, I already have an idea of my mind. Number one, how big the building is, and number two, where it might go. But
It's too big.
We'll take some time to sort that
What
out.
type of zoning issues can come up? That guy's a jerk.
Well, in this case, I think some of the land, or at least the land that we were looking at in our interview process, was town-owned. So I don't know if you're considering other parcels or not, but if it's town-owned, we have to look at the land based upon the town zoning requirements. So setbacks are certainly an issue, potentially building height, although I doubt that'll come into play in this scenario. Parking, definitely. We want to look at what the town's requirements for landscape around parking might be. These won't be huge parking lots, but we want to make sure that we understand that, you know, if you put 10 cars in a row, you got to put a vegetated landing island or something like that, in there. So those types of things can add up. We'll need to design the site in a way that we're not adding extra costs into it for things like that. If there's any easements, access or otherwise, legal easements on the site, we'll want to know what those are and any restrictions there are. We want to locate the well. We want to locate septic fields, access to utilities of that sort as well, and where our nearest power and services like telephone, cable, TV, that sort of thing, so that we
Because
generally
the well's considered public water supply.
The well will have setback requirements, as will the septic systems for structures as well as between the two. So we want to make sure we can design that, we know all that information going into it, and we can
Public water
we can put our building in a spot that isn't going to interfere with that. Right
Do
off
we
the
need DEP approval on any of this if we don't encroach on the well protection
I
zone?
I don't
Ben,
think
you
so,
know what?
not at all.
No. We're not gonna need any DEP approval as long as the water draw doesn't exceed whatever the well is now. If we have to draw like huge amounts of water and your well has 100-foot zone 1 and DEP would want a 150 based on their calculations, we'd have to look at that, but I don't see that happening.
Because the buildings are already on the property.
The uses are already on the
The uses, I
property.
mean,
The
are on
uses
the
are on the
property, so
property.
you're not looking
Yeah.
at.
And just
it's not
because
like
the
you're breaking
buildings are
law.
bigger doesn't mean the uses are
Right.
increasing.
And generally,
That's real important.
exactly, there really won't be, most likely, a lot of increase.
Right.
Right, so I don't see it, but we will be looking at it. The last thing we want to do is touch those 3 letters, DEP.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I know what
Agreed.
the well is.
I don't want to touch any state agencies if we don't have to. So that's the process for us going forward. So my expectation is that, we'd probably be able to have a draft for you to look at in 2 weeks. I don't know what your schedules are typically, but if that worked well with another meeting, I think that would be the most appropriate next step.
Did they mention a potential purchase of 4 or 5 acres?
Fire chief did mention the possibility that was in play. You guys can fill me in some more on that.
Yeah.
Until it's purchased, I'm not bringing it up.
Okay,
It's a rumor.
that's fine.
It's a rumor that some of us have been working on for a while, but
Well, we're obviously gonna only use what we've got available until we are told otherwise.
It won't affect the programming anyway.
No.
So the programming's gotta be done, and
Yep.
I think hopefully that'll get resolved within a month.
I'm hoping for the end of this week, but you never know.
If it gets resolved, we'll address that when we get ready to do the layouts.
I mean, we have a large enough parcel to do whatever. It would just be nice to have the extra, that's all.
We're gonna put just the building inspection department way out in the back.
The trouble.
Where nobody
anyway.
can find it, he's
Where
thrilled
nobody-
with that.
Yeah,
encourage him.
don't send people.
Don't
I'm gonna
encourage
get you
him.
out of the dungeon downstairs.
I like the dungeon.
I mean, I think just comment on just one thing you're noting about, about landscaping. I think that it's certainly good to understand where our bare minimum is, but considering that what we have up here and when we do this redesign is sort of a little sparse on that
Minimum.
concept.
Yeah.
It's a little beyond the bare minimum, it's sort of on the other side of awful. That is probably a place where at least we want to consider, what we can do economically, but to sort of green it up a little bit and provide a little shade here and there.
Absolutely.
So,
So you
I
want
think
us to
it's.
put a cranberry bog out there?
I don't think so. We've got a few of those around. So it's just one of those things
Yeah.
I think that we've all been sort of thinking about and just being thoughtful of what we put in and being able to sort of not only meet the needs for what we need to from, police and secondarily fire, but also to add to this, create this campus and create it into something that, will have long-term, look nice.
Yep.
And it's the center of the town.
Absolutely.
I want to go back to Harry's comment for just a second. It is my understanding that what we would be doing on this particular job is getting the 2 programs done, getting the building sizes figured out, rough layouts of both on the plans with rough parking, and then stop on fire and start focusing solely on
Schematic
police to
design.
develop the police to the point where we can get a valid estimate that we can take to town meeting and be bulletproof for the cantankerous individuals in the back left, 4 seats to the right, 2 seats to the left.
But I
That are
think,
gonna be attacking.
but I think we also need, not clearly as detailed, but we need some idea of how big a bread box the fire station is.
No, that's
The concept plan is, I
The
think-
concept plan will do that.
We'll
And
be able
we'd
to
have-
give you
we'd
a
have a
sort of
site plan as well.
here
Yeah.
estimate.
We have a
because-
concept site plan that would be a campus plan like you referenced, which
Right.
would encompass basically from the library to wherever the police station ends up, and is the development, the full build-out, if you will, of the whole area, including, maybe some thoughts about this building here, but gives the picture for the future. And then, you've got at least something that how big the fire station is gonna be generally, what is it made out of, and that sort of thing, so you can put a number on it. But it's
Right.
not developed to the level that the police station would be.
Yeah, because I think there's a desire that if we go as we think we're going to, that we get through town meeting and, we're moving,
Right.
I'm expecting that we're gonna have an appropriation at the May town meeting.
Yeah.
That's my understanding.
But for and we've been doing a lot this last year with the, Department of Revenue study and capital planning and all of that, that having that overall concept of what we're talking about is important from a
From a
planning
town
perspective.
standpoint, of course.
For, both, for next year and for
Are
the
you on
years
the
out.
finance committee?
No, thank you.
Because usually they wanna know so they can
Right.
plug in
Right, we need
where
to
the
have
blocks
that
of money are gonna
understanding.
come from.
Yeah.
Question for you.
Yeah.
With regard to the size of the buildings, how do you determine that?
Well, it starts with what we're doing now, is the space needs analysis. So the best way to determine is to take a look at what they've got, take a look at the number of people they have, take a look at future needs, and go back critically through projects that we've done and standards that we know that are out there and determine what is the need, the space need of the department looking into the future. And that gives you basically the size of the building. There are certain things you can add to that, as the community might want to, but you might have a need that says 7,000 square feet. I'm just throwing a number out. 6,000 square feet, 23,000 square feet, whatever it is. It's just a number until you decide that that's going to be the size of the building, and you have a lot of control over that. But at a certain point, cutting will start to impact real services that the police department can undertake, and that's my job to kind of say, okay, we're kind of at the point where we can't really cut anymore, or else what's the point of doing this project?
And it's not just services for the next 5 or 10 years. You're trying to look out for a longevity period of the building.
Right.
That the building will meet those needs, and we're
Yes.
not adding
Yeah,
to it.
and to that point as well, we're looking at wanting to do a type of building, using certain materials or standards that's going to last that time too. You know, you gotta think of the longevity of the materials you're building with, and it's a 24/7 operation. It's gonna get a fair amount of use, some would say abuse, and it's just gotta stand up to that. So that's part of the equation too.
When you're doing a public library or you're doing a public school, there's a requirement that the structure be designed for a minimum of 50 years to get the grant. And that standard is pretty much prevalent for public buildings. We're building a building that should last a minimum of 50 years. That doesn't mean you're not gonna be replacing things.
No.
Or-
It's gonna last for 50 years.
But based on the town hall we're in, I think we're safe to say it's gonna last 50
Or
years.
it's going to be used for at least 50 years. Let's just put it that way.
But, you know,
Yeah.
Plympton's not gonna pass a police station designed for 24 policemen when we have 8 full-timers today. So there's a balance in there somewhere between 8 and 10 or 12 or whatever, that, you know, you could see 25 years from now that you might have possibly have 4 more by then. But you might not, and those are the type of decisions this body's gonna make as we're going forward. Fire department too, I mean, fire departments, you have a pretty big call fire department, and that is something that is getting rarer and rarer because of the requirements on the actual call guys. Makes it harder and harder to get call guys, not that.
So most of them don't live in town anymore, or don't work in town
Yeah,
anymore. That's the biggest thing that we have seen in the times that we've been looking at communities with call departments, is they tell us we are required to shift to more full-time because we just can't find people. You can get anybody on the weekend, but during the weekdays, there's nobody around.
Insurance companies don't like it either.
no, you get a bad ISO rating.
Yeah.
It affects everybody. That's like a 2.5 override without a vote.
Where do you want to spend the money, here or here?
So it's a challenge. So that's our basic approach. And in terms of scheduling and that sort of thing, you know, as I said, I think in a couple of weeks it'd be appropriate to have a meeting to talk about the space needs. But I would suspect that we could probably work the remainder of our portion of the study on an every 2-week basis. It's typically too often to meet every week because we just won't be able to keep you satiated with the amount of information you'd like to receive, and it's just too frequent. And I think if we meet longer than 2 weeks, then there's kind of a question of what are we up to, where are things. So I think it's usually 2 weeks are usually a good strategy for us.
Okay, so we can schedule our next meeting for October 12th.
That, yes, I won't be there. That's my anniversary. So.
Well, that's
Bring
just
your
a
husband
bit-
here. It's no big deal.
49 years.
Bring him in. Want the cake?
Yeah.
Okay.
If we have to sit through this, he should have to sit through this.
He sits to worse, he's on planning. There is also a chance that I won't be here, but I can post the meeting and y'all can
As long as we
do it
have
without me.
a
And
quorum, I mean,
Yeah.
it's an important, the program really does drive everything. I won't say it's not important, it's important, but it's hard to visualize the program too.
Yes.
As a committee, it's hard for you to visualize what you're looking at.
Won't look
And
like a
he'll start
building.
talking about grossing factors and,
We'll stay out of the weeds hopefully a little bit, but depending on what you guys want to get into. But the problem for most folks is it doesn't look like a building. I can't draw you a picture of what it's going to look like. You can't get your arms around it that way. You kind of have to look at it as a analysis, as a space by space look at what this building is comprised of. Its building blocks. So it has been difficult in the past, for people to kind of reconcile that, but we can work through it, I'm sure.
I mean, analysis aside from itself, I mean, you've been doing this for a while. What's too big for us? What's too small for us? I mean, are we looking between 5,000 and 7,000 square feet for a police station?
I think there's.
don't answer him, he's
Yeah.
trying to box you.
I know,
I know,
I know.
but-
But you're not looking at a station like 17,000, 16,000, 15,000 square feet, because those are the ones that's just not right for your community. But I think it's hard. The challenge of doing a small police station is that it's hard to put the police department in a really small box. There's certain things they have to do that take up space.
We've got them in a tiny box now.
And look where you are. I mean, so it's really difficult. There's mandates, there's storage requirements, there's detention. There's just so much stuff that even if you only had, a handful of people working in the whole town on police, you'd still need. So I think it's really difficult when you're looking at under 10 to kind of say where you'd be at, but you're going to be right at probably the minimum amount of space. That's
I
my
mean,
guess.
I just see the voters, reaching a certain number that they may say that that's just too big.
And that's
for what
fine.
we have.
That's fine. That's what this
That's a
feasibility.
political question.
That's
Yeah.
feasibility process.
We haven't gotten
wrestles
there
with.
yet.
Yeah.
You can't handcuff him before he does what he has to do.
Yeah, we can, cops.
Well, he's not gonna cuff him, I assure you of that, so, maybe him, but not
That's right,
him.
too.
No, but we're gonna, Jeff, come on in this cage downstairs.
Yeah.
But,
But that's what the process is really designed to do. You give you the facts and the information about what the need is, present it to you and the board, and ultimately it's a town decision as to what is the town comfortable with. And if in your wisdom, what we come back with as the need is too big, then we've got to sit together and figure out how we get a station that's more palatable. And that's part of this feasibility process. I would be remiss in bringing to you an already pre-designed police station that says, this is perfect for your size community. It doesn't work like that. It's all a custom process. And it's always a give and take.
How many square feet are they in now?
What did you say? It was
5?
like
I think it's less than
a
5.
couple thousand,
Yeah.
3,000 maybe?
Yeah. I think it might be less than that.
Yeah.
it's got,
It's tiny.
If you count hallways and stairways and
Yeah.
Yeah.
floors,
Yeah,
things like
But-
it's
that.
tiny.
But I also think that, there's an opportunity, and we certainly saw that with some of the stuff you've done, is that you can take certain space and you're able to show that it can have multiple uses. So, if you're gonna need some place to meet, but if you turn around and make that
Training.
the
room.
public, make that the public part of the station, like we've seen in a couple of different designs where you have access for the private, but you also have access for the public. Now you have the opportunity, there's meeting space that can then be used by the police department primarily, but if you need meeting space, it's there.
By not handcuffing the designer and letting him
Right, be
stretch his
creative.
legs and be creative, you may find that he may be able to combine some of those spaces with the fire department also. So in other words, you might have a meeting room that could be a meeting room for both departments. There's 100 ways to skin this cat, but he's gotta be, you gotta just let him run for the first couple of weeks. I can guarantee you one thing, I've never been in a town, in all the years I've been doing this, where the architect came out and the building committee said, we think it's too small, make it bigger.
Yeah.
That's not gonna happen. He's gonna come back and tell you, public safety laws say this, the the public safety code says that, you need bigger storage for this, you need bigger evidence for that. He's gonna come back and tell you all that.
Right.
And then the give and take will occur. So expect the first pass to be something larger than you're expecting. Don't panic over it. It's gonna be something that we're gonna work with. And in the end, you're gonna be, all are gonna be jumping up and down and happy about the design. And we're gonna be going to town meeting all saying the same thing.
Sounds great.
Have to jump up and down too.
Yeah. So, I'm good for the 12th, I plugged it in.
Don't look at me. I'm here.
Okay, so it would be the 12th and then conceivably the 26th.
Yes.
Just every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay, do we have any other questions or concerns that we want to discuss tonight?
The only thing I wanted to discuss was, I gave you an email just a second ago. Just as Jeff had indicated, he did begin to reach out. This was the reach out email to the two chiefs, asking them for some data so that the meeting they had today was productive, and I'm assuming it was productive.
Very productive, yeah.
Very productive. So we're doing what we have to do, which is gather data before we can get too far. This is a perfect first step. 2 weeks from now, he's gonna come in and you're gonna see a building, but it's gonna be in written form, and that's a program.
We have a little bit of pictures. I mean, I'll show you an example. This is a page just out of another town's book here, but, so it looks like this.
Yeah.
So there's some drawing here, you can see kind of what the space looks like, it's furniture, that sort of thing, but there's a lot of words too, and numbers.
Okay.
And then the only thing I'll note, just looking at the calendar, we may in November have it condensed and come back in a week.
Thanksgiving,
So because I don't think anyone's meeting Wednesday before Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, but
but I
not
think
here.
we will be, we'll be here to meet with you when you need us to meet.
Okay.
Because we're on the clock now.
Oh, yeah, we have to keep meeting, and if one or two members can't make it, as long as we have a quorum, we should continue to have meetings.
I agree.
How is our clock anyway? I mean, knowing what we know now.
In terms of the time frame,
Yeah.
we're great. I think we're good. This is
I'm gonna
good.
develop, Jeff and I, between now and next week, we're gonna develop a new schedule, and we're gonna put together some dates that can't be missed.
Yep.
So that we can put out a nice little bar chart for you. Some of the dates that I need to know is when the warrant's gonna close. And if the warrant closes, do the selectmen in this town allow you to put a placeholder in while you're developing formulating the warrant language and the cost? So those type of things I need to know to be able to develop the actual drop dead date that we have to have the estimate. Because the estimate's really important, because when we do the estimate, I don't want to drop the estimate in the day before the warrant closes. I want to meet, and if you guys are horrified at the estimate, I want to be able to chop it back or develop it further and make sure that you're comfortable with it. Because we don't want to be going to town meeting with anybody uncomfortable. We have to be confident and ready to go. You know, there's nothing worse than when you go to town meeting and someone's not confident, they get killed.
Yeah, so it's last Monday in March is
Yes.
the close of the warrant. Yes, you can do placeholders.
Last
But
Monday in March?
Yeah.
Got plenty of time.
Wow, there's tons of time.
But the other piece I'll say, and then you can do placeholder, but the goal is, of course, that we always try to make sure that we're not amending the number on the floor. So
We're not gonna amend the number on
number
the
goes
floor.
out in the warrant. But I think the other piece is that we have to allow for some time to have
Well,
public discussion. Well,
my
about the
town is
review boards,
January,
I'm
and
talking
in my
people.
mind, I've been thinking January all along, so if we have till March, I'm
Yeah.
about to do the happy dance all the way up 58.
Camera.
Do you demonstrate with that happy dance?
I don't wanna get a ticket.
Might even need the fire hose for that.
Would be the first time.
Okay, so, we actually need a contract for the Board of Selectmen to sign. So do you have?
Do you want to do a contract? I mean, typically we've done letter agreements, and that's
Yeah.
sufficient for a feasibility study. When we
Yeah.
get to the next
Okay.
phase,
We
and we're
have to have a
actually
really
anticipating
formal-
construction, we'll have a
Right.
real contract.
We're gonna have a real contract by then.
Okay, then if you want to get me
He
a,
and I will work that out, and I'll draft up a, a one-page agreement referencing
Yeah, that's fine.
that.
I put it on the agenda already for next week, so. it's
Next week? Okay, so
Monday.
Monday's the meeting,
Monday's the meeting.
so it's gotta be done by Friday. Okay. Put that in the little booklet again. Okay.
Okay, no other business?
Good.
Let's have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Good night. Good night, thank you all for watching.
Thank you.